Today we are talking about a product category I rarely cover: sound cards, DACs, and audio interfaces. The latter is what we'll be looking at today, namely the Creative Live Audio A3 USB audio interface. It is not only aimed at people like me who would like to have an external USB audio solution, but more so, the target audience seems to be streamers, musicians, and podcasters. The price of $130 for the Live Audio A3 seems almost shockingly affordable for what it does on paper. Could we be looking at some sort of perfection within the mentioned price range? What is this device capable of, and what are its limits? As far as what comes included, the interface itself, plus a nice long 1.5 meter USB-C connection cable, along with a quick start guide. First of all, I'd like to praise the excellent build quality. I'd say this is a good mix of metal and plastic, leading to a weight of considerable 890 grams. All those individual knobs leave a great impression, as they offer a pleasant resistance and don't wobble in the slightest. I also think it's quite nice that the device is slightly angled. This makes it very comfortable to play around with the controls, etc. on the disc. And thanks to those rubber feet on the device's bottom, the interface doesn't slip away too easily. One of the selling points for the Live Audio A3 would probably be the high playback and recording resolution of 24 bits with a sample rate of up to 96 kHz respectively. Well, that's sure great, but that's what many competing products do as well. This audio interface only really stands out when focusing on the many inputs and outputs, as well as individual controls for each of those. Starting at the front, we have two headphone outputs, albeit of the larger 6.35mm type. Adapters to convert the widespread 3.5mm connector to a 6.35mm one are not included in the scope of delivery. The back of the device is where things really take off. We are looking at split 6.35mm stereo output for active monitoring speakers, and that's balanced/unbalanced. Then two XLR/6.35mm combo inputs for microphones, line, or instruments. There are individual switches for either line or instrument operation for both inputs. If phantom power is required for XLR, there is a button for 48-volt operation. However, both XLR inputs apparently are then powered with 48 volts. Unfortunately, it doesn't appear we can do this separately for each input. We also do get a 3.5mm TRRS mobile input. This, for instance, allows for audio from your phone or tablet to be looped through the audio interface and then have the interface output that audio. That's happening directly via the interface. Last but not least, the USB-C port for power and data. Now to the controls. Starting on the left, there's a separate knob that controls the input level of the 3.5mm TRRS port. With that knob, you basically adjust the audio volume you hear coming from the 3.5mm port through those provided headphone outputs, for instance. There are even LED level indicators right next to it. In the center, we have two knobs controlling the respective XLR/6.35mm combo inputs for microphones, line, and instruments, for instance. This way, we can increase the gain and amplify the inputs separately from each other, both also with LED level indicators. In addition to that, there's a button for direct monitoring for both inputs, which allow those, whether microphone or musical instrument, to be monitored directly via the headphone outputs in real time without latency. That's because there's no need for digital analog conversion to happen, which usually introduces latency and delay. If the LED lights up with a solid green, we are in mono monitoring, while blinking green means stereo. A very valuable implementation here being the mute button, which lights up in red when the inputs are muted. Now all our output controls are on the far right. At the top we are looking at the output volume knob for those stereo outputs. And underneath it, there are two individual volume control knobs for the two mentioned headphone outputs. Once the Live Audio A3 interface is connected to the PC running Windows 11, the device is basically ready for use straight away. While there still is an official creative driver that can be downloaded, in my experience, that's not absolutely necessary. It's of course advisable to set your desired playback and recording resolution within the operating system or via software, as is the case with all devices of this type. In the case of the Live Audio A3, that would be 24-bit and 96 kHz. However, when recording, make sure the playback and recording are set to the same sample rate. The only thing I connected to the interface were my Beyerdynamic DT770 Pro 80 ohm headphones, my all-time favorite so far. This creative interface manages to drive these headphones quite well and effortlessly. We see decent volume produced, and there's definitely power behind it with a nice, clean, respectable sound. But the amp is not as powerful or as good as seen on some dedicated DACs or a really good sound card. However, one should never at any time ignore the price of only $130 for this device. Nonetheless, headphones with a higher impedance than my 80 ohms should still work properly. I'm quite sensitive and picky and tend to quickly dismiss devices from my audio setup that I consider too weak to drive specific headphones. But the Live Audio A3 interface by Creative does a good enough job, thus managed to convince me and satisfy my needs. However, since I neither own any XLR microphones nor music instruments that make use of such a connection, I have to rely on the assessment, rating, and reviews of other people that have tested this audio interface. For the most part, the results are clean and satisfactory. Even microphones that have to be powered via phantom power sound good when driven by this interface, as I've learned from countless third-party reviews. So what is the Live Audio A3 capable of, and what can it not do? Unfortunately, recording via the 3.5mm port for mobile devices does not seem to be a feature. At least I didn't manage to get that to work in any shape or form. But then again, I'm a bit of a semi-layman. It should also be mentioned that unlike with Creative Sound Blaster sound cards, there is no stereo mix or what you hear option available as an input within Windows, which for instance would allow you to record all the sound the system would be outputting. Sure, maybe these are a bit of niche features, I expect. The Live Audio A3 does all the more in other areas of use that are aimed more so at streamers, musicians, and podcasters. We see a lot of versatility and functionality in those aspects. Nonetheless, I still wanted to mention what the device definitely is incapable of doing, just in case. Conclusion. At the stated price of $130, there's not much you can do wrong with the Creative Live Audio A3. There are plenty of ports and connections, decent build quality, and enough oomph and power for those inputs and outputs for microphones and headphones. There's also impressive and good real-time monitoring with LED level indicators. For podcasts, those two XLR/6.35mm combo ports together with those two headphone outputs are fantastic. So in my humble opinion, the Creative Live Audio A3 USB interface certainly is worth recommending. The price to performance ratio seems to be very appealing. Now here's my question for you. Do you personally own any audio interface, a DAC or sound card, or are you still relying on your good old onboard audio of your motherboard? If you happen to use a dedicated audio solution, which one is it and are you happy with it? If you enjoyed the video, I'd greatly appreciate a like, and if not, hit the dislike button. With that being said, thank you so much for watching, and until the next one.